So do you ever feel like you're just posting and posting and posting? You're being consistent like everyone's telling you to, but no matter how hard you try, it just feels like you're invisible to your audience that you're trying to reach. And then worse off, we start doubting ourselves and we start thinking to ourselves, is it me? Is my music good enough? Am I good enough? Well, here's the reality. 90% of the time, it's not the music, in my opinion. I know. If there's artists out there that haven't even tried to write a song and they're still trying to promote it, most likely it is the music. But I like to think that most of you out here watching this video have worked really hard at your craft. You've worked on making the best songs possible. And so in my opinion, most likely, it's not the music that's holding us back, but there's different strategies, there's different ways of looking at this business that we've been avoiding and putting off to our detriment. And so in this video, I want to break down, in my opinion, the 3 root causes of why musicians feel invisible and are invisible to their dream audience, but better yet, what we can do to fix it, okay? So the first thing that we need to dive into is we need to look at what is the thing that I feel like is causing a majority of these problems, and it's what's happening between our ears, okay? There is something, I'm a psychology nerd, there's something called subconscious projection. What you fear, right, you will project. And what happens is a lot of artists, unfortunately, have this perspective on themselves that is very low, right? And we're humble to the point where we're not, it's past humility and it's more just like self-deprecation. You know what I'm saying? Because there is a limit to this. Being humble is a good thing, but some of us make ourselves so humble that we view ourselves below our capabilities to actually achieve what we're trying to achieve. And that is not helpful. And what happens is, if on a subconscious, an unconscious level, you have feelings about your music or yourself like, no one's really gonna like my music, or people don't typically like my style of music. This is kind of a niche thing no one really likes. No one will ever buy anything from me. If you have those subconscious beliefs, you will telegraph them to your audience without you knowing, because a lot of that communication is nonverbal. There's so much communication between human beings that is nonverbal. And so we have to really figure out how to master this within ourselves and not fall into this pit of self-deprecation and viewing ourselves below what we're actually capable of. And here's the thing too. We think, no, if I just go out there and I put on a mask, no one will know that I feel a certain way about my music. It's very hard to hide that kind of thing, okay? Now, for example, let's just think about it in the terms of buying something, right? You want your fans to buy something. Most of the time, this is hopefully going to be a wake-up call, but I know some people are going to be offended when I say this, so brace yourself. The reason most people don't buy is because we're bad buyers. I know, right? And what I mean by that is, again, subconscious projection. If deep down you hate buying things, you resent people that you buy things from, and you think that the whole system of buying anything is just a corrupt endeavor head to toe and there's no redeeming qualities of it, you will project that onto your fans. Put it this way, you will never have fans that are better buyers than you, because you influence them. You are an influencer, not in like the TikTok, I'm selling a bubble machine kind of influencer. You're someone who influences somebody on their internal level. So you need to understand that you have that power. And if you yourself hate buying things, hate the people you buy things from, you will telegraph that unconsciously, non-verbally to your audience, and they will view that way about you when you sell them things. So you will never have fans that are better buyers than you are. So what I would recommend is become a better buyer, okay? This is something in my own life that actually made a huge difference, where when I started acting like buying something was a good thing, like I was 15, 16, I hated buying things because I had to spend the money, right? Oh, stuff is so expensive, what do I got to spend the money for? But as I got older, I started to realize how economics work. When I go to a local mom and pop shop and I buy something, that money goes to this mom and pop shop, which helps people have jobs, and there's a whole economy around transactions. And it's actually beneficial to everyone involved. It's a win for you, it's a win for me, it's a win for the whole economy. And so what happens is we need to develop this sort of idea, this comfort with purchasing things. Like last time you bought a guitar or a DJ board or a new mixer or whatever it is, right? Do you remember that excitement and that giddy feeling? Hopefully, I like to use musical instruments because that's usually where musicians are excited to buy things. That feeling, that giddy excitement that you kind of get when you've got a new piece of gear that you've got your eyes set on and you're like, ooh, we're going to get it. Ooh. If you're like that about everything, you will radiate that unconsciously, non-verbally to your audience. And you will give off these kind of vibes. And it's so funny. People think there's no way people are going to pick up on that. You would be surprised how powerful this thing between your ears actually is. It picks up way more information than your conscious mind is aware of, okay? So that's the thing that we really need to understand, is that your conscious mind is not taking in all the information that is actually being put into your brain. That's why they call it the unconscious or the subconscious. It's because it's not readily available up here. We're not consciously thinking about it. So a lot of people are cynical and they're like, this nonverbal stuff isn't going to really make a difference. I could tell you firsthand that nonverbal communication is some of the most powerful communication in the world. So what we need to understand is if we become better and we have better expectations, this is another thing too. We have these expectations that are properly aligned in the business, we're going to attract more of the people that are actually going to want to support us, and we'll be giving off the vibes that allow that to happen easily for them. And they don't have internal resistance because we're giving them mixed messages. You know, we're up on stage like, yeah, go support me. But we're like selling from our heels, right? We're like, you know, you could buy something, but don't feel obligated. You know, you don't have to buy it. That's not persuasive, right? But we have this expectation too that we're going to go out on stage, we're going to put on a killer performance, and just from the fact that we put on a killer performance, people are going to run over and just buy merch in crazy numbers, okay? Now, unless you've got some strategies to help make that possible, most likely that's not what's going to happen, right? Expectations kill so much momentum in this business because we get all up in our head about what this is going to do. Content is a really big example in this, where we think, oh man, I've put together a piece of content that's just going to blow up. This is going to go viral. Everybody look out, it's about to go off. And then what happens? Nothing happens. It goes into a vacuum. It gets 100 to 250 views and then it stops. But if we put so much of our expectation into this piece of content and it doesn't do well, it immediately kicks us down in the ego. And then we start having those self-deprecating thoughts, those thoughts of like, oh, am I good enough? I thought this was going to blow up. I really thought this was going to blow up. It's like, why did you think this was going to be the thing that made you blow up? I know it sounds a little negative, but I'm just saying this to be honest with you guys. What about posting a piece of content do you think is actually what's going to make you blow up? Like, what do you think is going to happen there? And most people don't really have a clear-cut answer as to what that looks like. Like, you have a piece of content that does well. How does that translate into music business success? Most people, it's like radio silence, right? Because the expectation is, well, yeah, you just make a piece of content, and when it goes viral, you know, you're just known now, and everyone loves you and just will buy from you just because you're you. Listen, people will buy from you just because you are you. But there is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people that happens to automatically. Most people that get into that state have had to have been led there by their artist, right? It's just the truth. So we have to be okay with not only who we are, we have to be okay that know that it's not your music the reason that your content most likely is not doing well. Because if you're one of the people on this channel, most likely you put a lot of time into your songs, a lot of time into your songwriting. So that's usually not the problem. It's the frame that we're putting around it in the content sphere. And there's all these other things that I'm going to kind of go into a little bit here. But the whole problem is we have all this subconscious programming. We've got all this stuff beneath the surface that we're projecting out onto our fans that may not be what we want to project out to our fans. So take a list and take note of those things within yourself. What are those false beliefs that you've been holding on to? You know, it's because I'm not good enough. It's because my niche is too small. It's because the economy. It's because Spotify. All of these false beliefs that are negative, we need to get rid of those. We need to push them aside and start to make room and make way for the reality, but also the more optimistic truth of what happens in this business, which is more like if I start living like the person I desire them to follow, I will become more followable. And I will become more influential and attractive. And not when I say attractive, I'm not talking about physical looks. I'm talking about attracting people like a magnet. You will be surprised how powerful and how magnetic authenticity is. Like when you're just being you, people want to be around you because so many people are fake. How many people can you say in this business that you've met that are completely superficial and completely fake? I don't have enough hands to count that many people, right? It's too many. But if we become that person, we start to develop the kind of skills and traits to develop and become more like that person that is more followable and more influential, you will become more followable. You will become more influential, and you will attract people into your music because you're starting to live and project yourself like who you were meant to be. Not this false idea of, I'm not going to be a big music star because I'm just, that phrase, I'm just this, I'm just that. No. Once you start living to your full potential and your true authenticity, you will start to realize how magnetic and attractive that is. And you'll start to realize the power in being you, right? So, okay, that's the first thing that we need to really hit the nail on the head. So I want you to list out a bunch of false beliefs that have been holding you back. And then I want you just to take a red Sharpie and just X them out, okay? The physical act psychologically of marking out those beliefs and then writing out the beliefs that you would want to replace them with and then underlining it with a green marker, right? Very psychological, very, in-depth kind of inner work, but will be helpful for you in the long run. The second thing that is holding artists back to make them invisible to their artists. So we understand now a lot of artists are invisible to their fans because they're projecting all this like, don't look at me, but they want people to look at you, but on the unconscious level, they're like, don't look at me, right? But how do we fix the next part of this? Having a better strategy. Sometimes you got the right mindset, but you don't have the right strategy. And as a consequence, no one knows where you're at or no one's seeing your stuff because the strategy is the problem here. So what does that usually mean? Usually it's an outdated strategy. I see this a lot of times in my rock and metal genre. People will just post flyers of a gig and that's their only form of promotion for the gig. That's not very effective. That's outdated. That may have worked in 2012 on Facebook, but times have definitely changed since then. So it's usually outdated strategies, things that used to work but don't work. Maybe they're taking clips of their music video and they're making that the content. Or, the standard pieces of content that most people put out there that's, with all due respect, kind of low effort. To crop out a music video. The music video is shot and done already. You're literally just taking a section, cutting it out and cropping it and you're done, right? It's very easy to implement that stuff, but is it effective? See, we have to look at something really important here. The difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Sometimes something is super efficient, but it's not effective at all, right? So yeah, it's super efficient to just go take a clip of your music video, chop it, throw it up on Instagram. That's very efficient, but is it effective? No, not very effective at all. However, putting in a little bit more work, to create a piece of content where, you had to talk into the camera, or maybe you had to do a performance while the camera was looking at you. It's a little bit more work. It's not as efficient as just cropping a music video and throwing it up on the internet, but it's way more effective. It's way more effective. I had a client recently who was posting out, reels on Instagram that were getting 25 views, 48 views, not very many views. And we started working on who is your dream fan. And this is something really important, is getting out of this egocentric mentality that myself and other artists have gone through, and hopefully you will overcome as well, is this idea of, I'm going to create content that I think is cool. I'm going to create content about me and my experiences. There's a way to do content about you and your experiences while not just making it all about you. See, the problem is, as artists, we have the proclivity to be a little bit more ego-driven, okay? We have bigger egos. It's just a fact of the way our personality makeup is made, right? So it's okay that we're a little bit, if we can check our ego, the ego doesn't become as much of a problem, but you got to recognize that it's there, and someone who can, hold you back, right? That ego is something there that will hold you back over time. And the reason it does is because when we're creating content and we're thinking about what we should put out there, we're usually thinking of, what do I think best represents this song? What do I think is cool? What do I think? What about my story and me and my? As opposed to thinking about them, thinking about what is something that they need to hear. So my client went from these 25 views per video We had a session, one of our first sessions, we dove into their dream fan avatar. Who is this person? What do they like? How can we connect with that person? And so we started figuring out, let's position ourselves in a way where we talk about the music that they care about and relate that music back to us. The first video that went out, it went from 25 views to like 250 views. I'm like, okay, all right. So now we're 10xing a little bit. Let's keep going. Let's dig more into that. We've clearly seen a bump from the previous content that we were trying, which was just like taking the album cover and throwing music behind it, right? Now they're kind of efficient, but not very effective way of doing things. So let me make sure, spam was calling me, make sure they didn't shut off anything. Okay, so the whole point of it though is that he went from a 10x increase, we dove even deeper into what was working. The next video got like 6,000 views. He quadrupled his follower count overnight. What did he do differently? Did his mindset change? A little bit, yeah, because at first he was like, talking in front of a camera, are people gonna think I'm cool? Like, is that cool? Am I gonna be like too personable that I lose the mystique around my music? There was some mindset stuff that we had to work through, but once, I was like the guy behind him, he's on the 50-foot diving board and I'm right behind him, like, we're gonna jump. And he's like, I don't know, man, it's really high up here. Are you sure I can make this dive? And I'm behind you, like, we're gonna jump off now. You can do this. Let's go. And what happens? They change the mindset. They go out there. They implement the right strategy. Got 4,000 views, 6,000 views, literally overnight. And then the next view followed up. It was a multiple thousand view video. So we had figured out what the fans best respond to, right? Not what I think is cool, not what he thought was cool. What do his dream fans that he's trying to reach think is cool? See, this perspective of not being egocentric, but by being fan-centric, this is absolutely crucial because any great marketing or selling that happens from understanding who the person you're communicating with is, what they desire, what is important to them, what they really want, and what they really want to avoid. Those are the things that will allow you to start speaking to your dream fan and not become invisible, because a lot of reasons that we're invisible is because we're like trying to speak to somebody about something they don't care about. It's like going up to somebody who's like a WWE fan and being like, dude, I just grew this garden and it's got tomatoes and it's got things. They're like, dude, like, I don't care. I'm going to keep walking now. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right? But if I go up to a WWE fan and I go, dude, Stone Cold Steve Austin is like down the street, they're going to be like, dude, follow, let's go. They're going to turn into that Vince McMahon. Where is he? Where's the son of a, and it's going to jump into that. Why? What's the difference? Same person. Well, the reason that person responds is because I'm speaking to something they care about, right? So a lot of artists are not thinking about things that other people care about. They're thinking about what they think is cool. How can I make my brand look a certain way? Branding is, to me, an internal thing. Marketing is the external process. Branding is the internal process. Branding is like, who do I want to be? What does it look like when I'm living my full potential and I'm maximizing my personality and kind of cranking it up to 10? No timidity, no being shy and coy. No, what if I just turned my personality up to 10? What would that look like if I was just living in my complete authentic self? That's branding. But when it comes to marketing, a lot of times we're still in the branding mindset. We're like, how do I present myself in this content that makes me look really cool and makes me, it's like, no. We've already done that work. We've done the branding work in just how you present yourself, how you dress, your attitude and things like that. From that point onward, it's all about them. It's all about, now that I have this branding, how can this brand communicate with this person to build up a following? And that's where the marketing comes in. The messaging and the marketing are where it's at. That's the outward focus of the fan. And this is really a core principle of something called direct response advertising, which I'm slowly saying that term in videos because I know it's kind of like a what? It's a classic marketing term, but that's fundamentally what my channel is all about, is direct response marketing for musicians. And a core aspect of direct response is knowing your customer, knowing the avatar of the person that you're trying to make a fan or make a client, okay? And speaking on their level. So the strategies that we most likely need to change is going from outdated strategies that are mostly ego-driven to up-to-date strategies, what's an up-to-date strategy? The irony is that an up-to-date strategy is just a strategy that implements the fundamentals better than anybody else. It's so ironic because people think, okay, outdated strategy means old is bad. No. There are certain strategies whose effectiveness changes with the context of time, right? So having a MySpace page and this whole systems and processes around getting people to the MySpace page and how we create fans using MySpace, that's an outdated system because the medium of consumption has changed from MySpace to TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, right? So it's changed. We can't use the same outdated strategies. So we think, okay, I'm going to do some new school stuff. The only thing new school about it is the medium of consumption, okay? What works, has worked, and will work pretty much for the duration of your life and my life. By the time human psychology on a fundamental level changes so drastically that direct response tactics and strategies don't work, will be thousands of years from now because human psychology is slow to evolve. Evolution takes place over long periods of time, right? So we have to look at things like that. You know, from a scientific perspective, we understand that human psychology is not going to change. So the things that are actually new that are working, calling it new is sort of just a marketing thing. It's the same strategies that have always worked throughout time, but presented in a modern medium that makes it easy for people in the context they live in to consume what it is we're offering, okay? So understanding mindset is usually an issue, strategy is usually an issue, but what is the last thing? If it's not strategy and it's not mindset, what is the other thing that might be making us invincible to our dream fans? And that is our skill set, okay? So I want you to think about this. There's a skill that a lot of artists need to cultivate because they've either don't have enough of this or they have too much of this. Confidence. Confidence is a skill. Confidence is really just being content. Notice content and confidence start with the same prefix, which is C-O-N. You need to be content with what you know, and that will produce confidence. You're not content with like, I'm not good enough and I guess I'll never just be good enough. That's not what I mean by content. What I mean by content is, listen, my skill level, is where it is. I can't change that. My skill level is where it is. That's content with where you're at. And confidence comes from that contentness. When you are content with where you're at, you don't settle with where you're at, but you're content, meaning you're not looking at it self-deprecatingly. You're not looking down on yourself for being at a certain spot. You're content with your position of competence. And then as you develop that comfort with your competence and that contentness, you will start to develop more confidence because your expectations are not set in, here's this piece of content that's going to blow up, or, this ego-driven kind of thing. We're putting our confidence in our ability to learn something. I think one of the best traits of successful people is that they rely not on their current ability to achieve and do things, but they rely on their ability to learn how to do these things. When a bird jumps on a branch, does it trust the branch or its wings? It trusts its wings because it understands that no matter what happens, I will find a way forward, right? That will produce confidence. And that's what I want you guys to start developing as a skill is confidence in yourself. Confidence is not cocky, by the way. So there's artists on one side of the spectrum that are like not content and they're looking down on themselves and they have this lack of confidence, right? But then there's some artists who are on the other side of the spectrum. They got way too much confidence. They're way too cocky. And when does that cross the line? When you start becoming uncontent with your situation and you start to try and flex. You start to try and present yourself as more than you are. Now, there's a lot of subtle nuance to what we're talking about here because just because I'm not, for example, just because I'm not a millionaire or whatever you're thinking, just because I'm not making $1 million from my music or I don't have X amount of fans, that's okay. Be confident in the position you're at, but don't be so cocky that you don't have those million fans and you walk around and talk down to everyone like you're hot, the hot thing that has a million followers even though you don't, right? That's the difference between confidence and cocky. Cocky is when you start overextending what you really are. That's not just living in your full potential and being your full authentic self. Now we're pushing past authenticity and going into inauthentic realms because we're overstating ourselves, right? So if you've got 1,000 fans, you, one, don't need to look down on yourself like, well, Taylor Swift has 1 billion. I only have 1,000. No, we don't need to do that, but we also don't need to do this. I've got 1,000 fans. Haha, it's basically like I've got 1 million, so screw you, I'm the king. We don't need to do that either, right? So it's this nice balance of being content with where you're at, but also being confident knowing that you can become more. Because what decides whether you become more is not some arbitrary thing that happens in the industry from some label or some outside source. It's what happens on the inside of us when we start to grow and invest in ourselves and move forward. That's what gives us confidence. That's what gives us confidence. Now, the next skill that I would recommend that you start cultivating a little bit and getting this stuff done and getting confident with this is video editing. Now, I don't want you to become Adobe Masters or Final Cut Pro. I don't even know. I use iMovie. I don't even know what the big editing softwares are because I just use iMovie, okay? Or Instagram, the in-app editor. You don't have to be a giant, oh my God, I'm a super amazing editor. But you gotta know some basic things. You gotta know how to trim the edges, trim out some of the spots where maybe you're going, trim out those kind of things. That's very, very easy basic editing, right? Now, in video editing, there is a skill it's sort of video editing, but it's not, right? Video editing is like the aesthetics of it, like how do I chop up the video? There is another aspect of this, which is what is the captions that I write? What's the hook that I put in the video? What do I write in the captions beneath the video? What do I do there? In content editing, that's not really editing. That's more in the sales and persuasion territory. And that's another skill that we need to develop. So we need the confidence so that we can go start to take action now on things that will actually move us forward in our music business. We need to learn basic content editing so that we don't get stuck in this position that a lot of artists that I've worked with have been in the very beginning stages, which is they're spending 3, 4 hours, 5 hours on content. It's like, whoa. We need to develop our content editing skills so that we can edit content 30 minutes, an hour at max, because our time is valuable and we want to make sure that we can become as efficient and effective as possible with our content. And so that's why I say content editing is a skill, not that you're going to learn how to do all the fancy transitions and the overlays and the CGI. Don't think of it like that. Just think of it like, what are the skills I need with my content to be able to put content out like this and just put it out fast? How do I chop? How do I put up captions? Maybe throw some music underneath it. Those basic kind of things, right? That will be extremely helpful because I know some artists don't put out a lot of content because they think to themselves, well, I'm not a video editor. I don't want to spend all my time video editing. So there are people that spend 5 hours editing because they know they have to put out content, but they're super perfectionists. So they want to make sure that everything is perfect. But on the other side of the spectrum, you've got artists who are like, I don't want to learn how to do content editing. I'm an artist. There's a dangerous phrase that exists in this business, which is, I got in this business to be an artist, not a insert thing that they have to do to actually grow as artists. Because that's usually what the excuse lies into. Hey, listen, we got to shoot some content so that our dream fans can know who we are and start to relate and connect to us. I got in this to be an artist, not a content creator. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I didn't get into this to be an influencer. Yes, you did. You did. I hate to be the guy that's letting you know you did. Sorry if I'm the one who has to break the bad news to you, but if you'd made the choice, I am no longer a hobbyist, I'm going to turn music into some form of income and livelihood, then you absolutely did sign up for that. That's 100% what you signed up for. Because being a content creator, again, doesn't mean you're making bubble machine ads on TikTok. Creating content is the same thing as making a music video in the 1980s, or the same thing as making a radio campaign in the 70s and 60s, right? Or doing the talk show circuit back in the day. There's no difference. It's the same thing. Content creation is just a modern term that we've given to short form and long form content. Really, this is the same thing that has been happening throughout history in the music business. Content is just the medium of consumption that fans have of music. Back in the day, people watched only television, and that's why music videos were the content creation of the day, because people were watching TV all the time. They needed to have some music videos pop up, so there was ways for people to discover music. So artists went and created visually engaging videos to get people who were watching TV to continue watching TV and watch their music videos and not change the channel, right? That has evolved into content as we know it. But the only difference here is there's no gatekeepers. Back in the day, there were gatekeepers for everything, and some people argue that that was a good thing for certain things. While I agree that it certainly kept the quality as high as it could possibly be, there was a lot more suppression. There was a lot more gatekeeping, a lot more artists that were put on the shelf who were actually extremely talented, but because they didn't reach some sort of arbitrary metrics that labels decided were, well, you sold 1 million records, so if you don't sell more than 1 million records, you're a failure and we're going to shelve you. It's like, what pressure to put on artists? It's terrible. But nowadays, the content we can create. We can sit in our office or in our desks and do whatever and create content, put it out there tomorrow. So content creation and content editing is just how do we get ourselves out to our fans as quickly as humanly possible, okay? Now, the last skill that we need, putting this all together, you've got confidence and you're content with where you're at, so you know you've got that ability to weather the punches that this business is going to throw at you, and you're good at putting content out there quickly. You know, you're not overthinking it. You just got the basic skills to edit the content to where it needs to be so you can get it out there to the world. The next piece of the puzzle, and in my opinion, this is so important, like, man, my life before learning this and my life learning after this do not look the same at all, okay? And I hope yours don't either. I hope it looks way better after discovering how to implement this skill and cultivate this skill, which is sales and persuasion. I know some people have a thing in their mind. When they hear the term sales, a lot of people get the ick. You know, a lot of people just immediately images pop up of like pushy internet marketers or used car salesmen and all this kind of stuff. But here's the thing. Selling and persuasion, you've been doing that your entire life. When you were a kid and you went up to your parents and you're like, Mom, I'd really love the Honey Nut Cheerios. And like, I don't think you need any Honey Nut Cheerios. It's got a lot of sugar in it. And you're like, please, but it's got a lot of grain. It's got a lot of fiber. It's got it on the box. It's kind of healthy, right? There's some sugar in it, but there's healthy stuff going on. And they're like, okay, whatever, you can put it in the box. You're selling. You're persuading. I can tell you right now, my son, he's almost 2. That dude is a master persuader. That dude can melt my heart in half a second and pretty much get me to do whatever he wants me to do because he knows how much I love him, right? He knows absolutely that if he's like, Dada, I need food, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, little dude, let me go get you some food. I have to be very conscious of like, I just gave you a snack. Why do you want another snack? I just gave you a snack. Like, I have to be very conscious of it or he will persuade me like no one's business, right? So you have been doing persuasion and sales your entire life. Remember the last time you approached that cute girl or that cute boy and you wanted something to happen, and so you were conversating in a way that you were hoping something was going to kind of, some sparks were going to get lit and a passionate relationship was going to form? You were persuading and selling, right? When you go up to a teacher and you're like, listen, I had to go to a funeral yesterday. I got home and I just was not in the state of mind to finish my homework. I know that's a serious situation. Some of y'all lied about it in school. Don't lie to me now. I know some of y'all lied about it in school. But some of that really happened. When you're communicating that kind of stuff, you're selling, you're persuading. Because you could have a very true situation come up where it's like, yeah, I went to a funeral yesterday and I just didn't do my homework. Will the teacher be more receptive to that? Just because you went to a funeral? Maybe a little bit, but not as much of just like, yeah, I went to a funeral yesterday at like 11:30 in the morning and then I got home and just didn't feel like doing anything, and so I didn't do my homework last night. They're not going to be as forgiving about that. But if you go up there and you go, man, I went to a funeral. It was pretty early. It was like 11:30, but I got home and I just did not have any energy to do anything. I was kind of depressed, you know, and so I just sort of laid around. I'm so sorry. I missed this deadline. It totally slipped my mind. Is there any way I can make it up for extra credit? Now they're going to be a little bit more open to it. Why? Because you're actually selling. You're persuading. And it's the truth. So you're not lying. That's a big thing that people, you know, get a bad taste in their mouth with selling about, is people who have lied to them in the context of selling something. So you never want to lie. That's absolutely crucial. Because if you lie, your fans are just going to associate with you with lying, and then anything you say will never matter because they'll just think you're a liar. So it's important for you to maintain your integrity and always sell based on truthfulness. So here's the thing. A lot of people think selling is being untruthful or trying to manipulate people. No. Selling is fundamentally persuasion, getting people to act. Like, think about good leaders. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. Hell, think about Jesus. Those guys were selling and persuading people. Now, did like Jesus have like a thing to sell you? No, he was talking about spiritual salvation, right? But just using him as one of the most influential figures throughout history, I mean, literally, what year is it? And from what event are we counting that? Just going to say that. That's not even a religious comment. That's just an objective comment. But you look at this kind of stuff, those people were persuasive. They got people to move and act in a certain way because of their language and the way they carried themselves. That is persuasion fundamentally, is you living in that full authenticity, having the right strategies, but also having the communication skills to get people to feel like supporting you now. See, it's one thing to do the bystander kind of like, yeah, you guys can just buy whenever you feel like it. Guess what? When you say to fans, you guys can buy whenever you feel like it, they'll just buy whenever they feel like it. But if you can cultivate a sense of urgency and desire through your persuasion and through your selling so that they feel something internally that motivates them to take action now we've got something powerful, right? Because we're using our words in a way to get them to take action that is something that's actually beneficial for them, because we know our music provides value. We know them getting that t-shirt or that wristband or whatever is going to build a connection with you as an artist, and your music is going to serve them for a long period of time, if not their entire life. So we have to be confident that what we're selling and persuading people to act upon is actually worth it for them. Because yeah, it's going to be worth it for us, but it's also worth it for them. So those skill sets, there's many more skill sets that you can develop. But to me, I was like, what are like 3 that could get people to like immediately start getting attraction and attention from their dream fans, right? Because the whole concept of this video is that artists feel invisible, musicians feel invisible. And if we learn how to sell and persuade, and we get those right skills where we can, we have the confidence, we know how to communicate, and we can edit the content in a way where we can just get it out there quickly, you're going to start increasing the likelihood that you're going to attract fans and not be invisible anymore, because you're getting content out there consistently, you're confident when you're doing it, and you're communicating the right messages when you do it. So we've covered 3 things mainly today are the reasons that musicians are invisible to their dream fans. It's because of their mindset, it's because of the strategy, or it's because of the skills. Because if you got the skills, but you don't know how to apply it with the right strategy, you don't have the right mindset about it, that's not going to do you any good. Let's say you got the right mindset and you've got the strategy, but you don't have the skills. Well, you're going to know what to do, but you're not going to know how to do it very well. And let's say, you've got the strategies and the skills, but you don't have the mindset. Well, that's not going to matter, right? So you have to have all 3. You've got to have the mindset on the right path. You've got to have the right strategies that you're implementing, which in my opinion, direct response strategies will work forever. And then number 3, you got to cultivate the skills. You got to commit to learning these things. Because when I started this, I had all the same fears that you did. I had all the same anxieties about myself. I had all the same is this really what I want to spend my time on? I'm an artist, and so if I'm not spending 99.99% of my time on music, am I not a real artist? And all these things come into your head, right? But then what I started noticing, once I said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to commit to learning this now. What happened? I started to get better at those skills I was learning, and my musical ability and creativity was not affected at all, right? In fact, I feel like it's easier because now with my perspective that I have when it comes to sales and marketing, I'm able to get perspective on the stories necessary so that when I'm crafting lyrics or when I'm trying to create something emotionally, I know how to cultivate those emotions, right? I remember one time recently, in the last 3 months, I just had a week where I wrote 5 songs in a row, full songs, front to back, boom, 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 got them done. That if the claim that working on business stuff hurts your musical creativity, I wouldn't be able to write any songs. I'd be so focused on websites and emails and sales stuff that I couldn't possibly focus on my music. But that's just not the truth. Now, if you get unbalanced in a sense where you're not paying any attention to your music whatsoever, then sure, yeah, you can get to a position where you're I haven't written anything in 3-6 months because I've just been ignoring my music. That's a bad thing. You don't want to do that. You want to use, like, you're a creative. Don't think of things so compartmentalized in black and white. You're a creative, which means when it comes to your business, you can be creative too. Figure out what works and figure out how to creatively apply what works to your situation. And so hopefully today you've got some help with your mindset, you got some strategies that you can focus on, and you got the skills that you can start to cultivate to help you actually start moving forward in your music business. So if you got some value from this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, the like button, notification bell, all that kind of good YouTube-y stuff. And if you would like some one-on-one help implementing these direct response systems into your music business, then click the link that's in the description. You can apply for a one-on-one coaching call to potentially work with us. And so if that's a good fit for you, make sure to check that out. It's going to help you out insanely like it's already helped out our other clients. If not, no sweat. I look forward to seeing you guys on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.